Ever since I decided to play the FromSoft games, from Demon's Souls to Elden Ring, without leveling my character or using summons of any kind, the community that has sprung up around these games has fascinated me. From a whole subreddit dedicated to helping each other as one bros, to YouTube channels focused purely on base level runs, it seems people get an extra kick out of taking Hidetaka Miyazaki's death traps and raising the bar of challenge even further. However, one thing I noticed while preparing is that all of these players seem to be, well, very good. I myself was merely okay. Don't get me wrong, I love these games. I've played basically nothing else since finally clicking with the games back in 2018. But I didn't possess the innate skill set to do what these other remorseless murder robots appeared to be able to do. And slowly I began to realise that this was a good thing. It was time to show that anyone could complete these games at base level and without summons, as long as they had the right mix of craft, perseverance, cheesy tactics, and yes, a dash of skill. So over the course of nearly 18 months, I'd streamed my trials and tribulations, defeating every boss across all 7 Soulsborne games. And now it's time to rank who I thought were the 50 hardest to defeat. And this is a proper list. Not those, oh, we're ranking every boss. Excluding the Chalice dungeons, Sekiro Prayer Bead bosses, bosses with a G in their name, and bosses who are vegetarian. Those lists piss me off. I did defeat all 380 bosses with a boss bar, from Demon's Souls to Elden Ring. So all 380 are eligible for selection. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. We kick things off with an admission of my own failing as a base level runner. I can't parry loop this woman for longer than half a minute. Never could, never can, probably never will. A little secret I'll let you in on. The default Chalice isn't too drastically different at Blood Level 4, as its core mechanic is fucking over the player anyway. I mean, half of Bugger All Health is still Bugger All Health, right? With that spiteful knowledge in mind, I went in and prepared myself for a complete slugfest, and that's how it proved. My trusty pistol was the total MVP here. Spoiler, not for the last time in the list. I still managed to land a few successful parries, but mostly running away and shooting, then eventually poisoning the bitch with knives worked a treat here. For sustained concentration mixed with tedium though, she just about scrapes into our list. Dark Souls 1, with its multiple bonfires in an area, was such a pleasant change from my inaugural Demon's Souls run. It was also a game I knew far better, so my initial foray into Dark Souls Soul Level 1 started really smoothly, including a first time victory against the Bell Gargoyles. This serene progression came to an end in Blighttown, with a desperate scrambled victory against this absolute cow. Her wonky hitboxes caused me no end of pain, while spacing around the lava attack forced me to play unlocked, although this proved a useful skill to acquire for later in the run. Her spider head for a torso has always freaked me out a little as well, so that didn't help matters when it came to keeping my nerve. A poisoned hand axe managed to get me over the line here, as my standard attacks were doing pitiful damage. Couple this with an incredibly close near-death experience just before victory, and Quelaag more than earns her spot here. On top of all of the normal bullshit this fight throws at you, I became utterly stuck with the final act of this battle, the supposedly triumphant moment of glory when you jump onto the branch in the middle, hack your way through and kill the Weevil within. At Soul Level 1 I was moving too slowly with Havel's gear on and taking too long to get there without the ground flame attack one-shotting me. With lighter armour, the swipes were knocking me into the holes. It really felt undoable until I learnt a valuable lesson that stood me in good stead for the challenges yet to come. Getting creative and mixing approaches can yield success. I used Havel's armour to get to the branch, quickly stripped off my armour and went naked, rolled through the branches and did the needful. But the hour or so's complete agony and frustration combined with a very annoying run-up lands the Bed of Chaos on this list. The first Elden Ring boss on the list, so it's time to discuss how I approached this game in particular. For an extra challenge and a desire to mess with the game's mechanics, I decided to play it region locked and as linear as possible, so no running to Fort Faroth for the Source Seal at the start of the game, for example. Essentially, I could only move on once I'd completed all of the bosses in a particular area, so all 30 odd in Limgrave, then on to Shifra, then on to Liurnia, etc, etc. With that in mind, some of the Elden Ring boss placings in this list will be related to that. Loretta posed the most significant challenge at this stage of my run, in late, deep Liurnia. Her moveset is deceptively tricky, leaning into that Red Wolf of Radagon dual magic melee attack vibe, and that second phase can become a real doozy with the barrage of spells she's chucking at you. I also hadn't realised at this stage, compared to her real life version in the Haligtree, that she's totally parryable, so that definitely added an additional layer of challenge. A few well placed square offs with my trusty Lordsorn straight sword finally took her down, but she certainly earned her keep defending me from Ranni. Our first gank boss in this list, and spoiler alert, far from the last, these three absolute shitheads nearly brought my journey in Bloodborne to a shuddering halt. The Katana guy in particular became my loathed nemesis to the point where I started plotting revenge against his nearest and dearest, before remembering that he was a series of pixels on a screen and therefore probably didn't have a family. The snake attack in phase 3 just becomes so much more intolerable when you can't just blast them down like you can on a regular run, and instead have to run around sneaking hits in when you can. I caught a lucky break in my successful attempt when surviving a serpentine blast with a sliver of health, and was then able to capitalise and finally put them down. But this boss was definitely my Bloodborne Blood Level 4 wake up call, as things have been progressing relatively smoothly until then. Sekiro was a funny game to complete in the run. Even the concept of base level was up for debate, with some people viewing no attack power and or the additional Demon's Bell Charmless modifiers as a true level 1 run. Ultimately, I opted for no prayer beads only, meaning I played with base level vitality and posture. For those who are dissatisfied with this, I can only apologise. Anyway, I'm going to let you know right now that this is the only Sekiro boss on this list. Crazy, right? Ishin and Alfather went down pretty smoothly with my underhand shinobi tactic of running around a lot, but this bull nearly drove me insane. An obscenely large health pool and annoyingly evasive moveset, coupled with a tendency to run out of the combat arena entirely, thereby resetting the fight, meant that I started to dislike the Fountainhead Palace. Something I never thought I would say. Its aggression at close quarters was nothing to sniff at either. Luckily I managed to eventually get a random posture kill, but take it from me, being a matador sucks. These two dickheads were the only boss roadblock on my Demon Souls run. I cheesed False King Allant with poison to my eternal shame. Look, it was early days on the channel and I just wanted to get through. And it also served as the first indicator that gank is the nemesis of the Soul Level 1 runner. The janky 2009 moveset, bizarrely untouched in the remake, meant that any momentum was completely lost when trying to take down the first Maneater before the second turned up, what with the flying away for agonising seconds on end. Oh, and let's give a shout out to that goddamn Mind Flayer Phantom on the bridge. Without magic, I doubt I would have managed it, and thank goodness for that brazier in the middle that allows valuable cover and splitting of aggro. I'm convinced that these guys will always pose a challenge at any level without the Firestorm Pyromancy, and they certainly took away all of my patience in this inaugural level 1 run. Gwyn's Firstborn certainly lived up to expectations when it came to difficulty, but my experience hasn't actually soured me on the fight. It's still a massive rush when you figure out the timing. Dark Souls 3 was probably the most enjoyable game to do at base level because very few things can one-shot you, and the visceral nature of the boss encounters sustained me through even the most challenging encounters. Nameless served as a tutorial for Elden Ring's bosses and their delayed moveset, but he would still rank highly for hardness if put up against them. It took a while to get a hang of the spectacular yet frustrating first phase, and then the duel comes in and slaps you straight back to square one. He's a complete kitten if playing as a caster, but when it's straight melee up close, you need to strap in and get your rolls on point. Eventually I started seeing the code and nearly wiped him out hitless, but there's no doubting that he pushed my shit in before then. A fantastic fight. Look, I'm going to be honest here. I just can't work out this big bastard's first phase, and I find it by far the more difficult of the two. He's so bloody quick, and I just can't enter that fabled flow state with him that so many others go on about. And of course, being one of the final bosses in the Elden Ring gauntlet, he hits like an absolute truck. I'm pretty sure that if the Hoaraloo stage was like phase 1, but with a few extra stampy stamps thrown in, this guy would be much farther up the list. But instead I found keeping a decent distance and counter-punching with an Ice Spear Ash of War reduced the difficulty of the encounter drastically. I also want to take this moment to say that I find the boss itself a bit stupid and incongruous to the tone of the rest of the game, but that's by the by. For Godfrey's wombo combo madness as you're trying to get a foothold in this fight, he more than earns his spot on this list. What a dreadful, painful experience from start to finish. This boss sums up the complete misery of progressing through Yaha Ghul at blood level 4 rather nicely. Limbs flying everywhere, an AoE with very little wind up, and a one-shot attack from the sky where you get your head piled in from bodily organs adds up to a majorly frustrating experience. This is also by far the worst boss door run-up so far in the list, thus necessitating the need for save scumming. The hitboxes on the attacks can go fuck themselves as well, as they led to so many "what got me there" moments. Implementing the ultimately successful break the leg strategy became a frustrating case of trial and error, as the boss uses plenty of stay away tactics, not least of which is his utterly disgusting appearance. This could possibly be the most unfun boss to fight on the entire list. This boss definitely gets a lot right when it comes to a gank boss encounter, and the poison spit is a gentle and manageable obstacle compared to one from a boss higher up in the list. No spoilers. However, both starting demons still pose a substantial challenge before shit gets really crazy when Chernobog from Fantasia, the Demon Prince, shows up. Dark Souls 3's generous iframes when it comes to rolling really shone in this fight for me, along with my first and only successful use of a bleed-infused bandit's knife. Fighting in such a legendary area as the OG Firelink Shrine gave me an additional boost of lore-focused adrenaline, which ultimately took me over the top and granted me access to the Ringed City, but it won't be a battle that I will shake in a hurry. Am I going to be ostracised by the Souls community for stating that I actually quite like this fight, despite its difficulty? Possibly, but I stand by it. Crucible Knights are enjoyable as all hell to parry to oblivion, and this encounter doubles your fun. Luckily, I had just obtained the golden parry Ash of War shortly before entering the fog door, which allows for even more forgiving parry windows. The fight still provides plenty of moments of frustration, generally when one covers the other like two underage frat boys at a keg party, but I always felt like I was inching towards success, unlike plenty of other entries on this list. One thing that I will say was an absolute misery at rune level 1 was the heroes' graves. These are some sick son of a bitch areas, and I hope whoever is responsible stepped in a puddle the next day. Christ, they were annoying. Maybe the only boss I ended up beating through pure anger and rage. I'm still not entirely sure how I managed it. No other boss in the Dark Souls 2 main game highlights the curse of low adaptability more than this one. I've also got to give a shout out to the little Danny DeVito guy by the boss fog door who'd get me half the time too, as I was trying to enter the arena. This boss takes one of the best and most memorable encounters from Dark Souls 1 and pisses on it from a height equal to, well, a belfry. Dark Souls 2 gets a lot of unfair stick from the fans, but on this matter, the common consensus is absolutely correct. This boss is a pile of old wank. Our first shining example of how base level runs become a completely different beast to standard runs. I knew this northern asshole would become a thorn in my side from the moment I messed up killing him during his opening spiel. An added complication was that, due to the linear all bosses route I had taken previously, he had also acquired Scarlet Aeonia and Mohg's Bloodflame to aid him in battle. And boy did he choose to use them. Over and over and over again. Never has the nickname the all spamming been as apropos as it was here. I would find myself pinned back constantly by his glint blade phalanx, allowing him to unload a constant barrage of endgame incants and spells into my sorry face. The arena also doesn't get enough credit for its pure unhelpfulness either. There's very little cover anywhere, and you can easily find yourself corralled into a corner because the floor covering the narrow corridor has been covered in bollocks. Eventually we settled into a long-range duel where my trusty Halo scythe, seriously, don't sleep on this weapon, triumphed. But this scumbag more than proved his worth in his challenge for the Elden Throne. I actually had a little soft spot for this boss before attempting it at base level, mainly because I sympathised with being the only other boss in a DLC containing the sheer badassery of Sister Frieda. However, I now retract that sympathy and have chosen to replace it with unbridled loathing. I had already struggled to get through that strip of Ariandel containing enough walls to pull 17 sleds. I counted. Then this boss turns up with another 3 of the fuckers, plus a suddenly challenging Grave Tender. Oh, the Grave Tender. Oh, this guy was doing 75% of my health when landing a successful hit, and all of a sudden become a shield god into the bargain. All of this meant that if I very rarely, if ever, managed to get him down before Sif ordered off Wish and packed with steroids turned up, although the objectively correct strategy in a gank is to finish off the enemy with 25% health left before tackling the one at full health, this became a nightmare when I was getting blasted with lupine charges from off screen. A little bit of luck mixed with learning to jump into the wolf headfirst on those attacks eventually saw me home, but I think it ended up being the only boss in Dark Souls 3 that I used the Tears of Denial spell for, which says it all really. Caelid and its rot-infested hellscape sent me almost as mad as General Radahn himself on this run, contributing several entries on this list. The first of these entries also serves as the only Elden Ring dragon on this list. I belong to the crowd of people who believe that they largely fixed dragon fights in Elden Ring, simply by the use of torrent. However, this elderly shithead was a return back to the dark old days, and made one episode a living nightmare. An absolutely infuriating open-air arena, maybe the worst of any field boss, coupled with a ridiculous Scarlet Rot Breath Blast, which had very little wind-up for the distance it covers, meant that I was in control of throwing range after half an hour. The old bastard had a horrible habit of getting stuck up trees for minutes at a time too, but with the ability to still blast me from distance. It took an agonising chip away at the legs strap with my trusty dragon halberd to finally down this beast. Another huge surprise for boss difficulty jump from normal to base level The flailing arms and smothering nature of the emissary's entourage made even getting to phase 2 a complete misery. At this stage of the run, I hadn't learned how to dodge a call beyond reliably either, so I imagine that if I'd have an easier time of it if I tried again, but I can only base it on my actual experience, and by that metric, these little blue fuckers deserve their spot here. It took good old Bone Marrow Ash and a few well-placed gunshots to finish the job on the big boy. Although it's worth pointing out that the swarm of Goombas keep fucking up your lock-on, even when you're trying to actually hit the boss itself. A complete nightmare. If the Belfry Gargoyles represent the nadir of low adaptability in Dark Souls 2, then this bitch shows how heinous the game's hitboxes can be sometimes. It would feel like she was clipping me from across the arena on occasion. Another huge problem due to low adaptability was that drinking Estus took longer than a Vati lore video, and she penalised sipping in the blink of an eye. An absolutely torturous run up through Sinner's Rise didn't improve my mood either, sometimes taking up to 4 minutes from Bonfire to Fogdoor. She did help me improve my rolling game for the challenges ahead, but the sheer unfairness of a lot of the battle made me want to drown myself in the Rise on the way back to her Fogdoor. The toughest of the 4 boss souls in Dark Souls 2 by a considerable margin. I'd heard bad things, very bad things, about this fight at Soul Level 1, and obviously some of it definitely applies based on their placing here, but it wasn't actually as awful as I'd feared. You just need a lot of patience and a crossbow with lightning bolts. But let's not gloss over the reasons why they're so difficult at base level, and particularly without summons. They constantly cover each other and tag each other into combat, similar to the Crucible Knight duo, except that your Dark Souls 2 character moves like an asthmatic pensioner compared to your Elden Ring one, thereby making this encounter much tougher. You can easily find yourself stun-locked by one's sword swipe and then finished off by the other's sword stab. I died quite a few times to this killer combo. Let's not also forget the treacherous arena, with huge holes easy to fall down while you're circling and trying to find gaps to attack. I eventually triumphed by whittling the first down to around 5% health, and then focusing on the second, before finishing them both off almost simultaneously. One of the dubious pleasures of the all-boss run is butting heads with a tucked-away boss who is incredibly difficult with the restrictions you happen to be running. The Putrid Tree Spirit, found in a small, easily missable catacomb in the corner of Radahn's arena, is probably the most dubious of dubious pleasures I've ever encountered. The normal tree spirits have pretty unfun and brutal movesets to begin with, but you add Scarlet Rot into the mix, and you've got yourself a heady balance of frustration and sheer visceral overstimulation. The two moves that became the bane of my existence were the Tail Whip one-shot, which often immediately follows an attack I just dodged, and especially the hand stamp at close quarters, which I began to loathe with every fibre of my being. This fight took a lot of practice to get good at, and unlike a lot of bosses on this list, I reckon that I could now consistently defeat it hitless, but trust me, only completionists should be taking this one on at base level. I've always hated this fight. Look, seriously, what am I missing here? But Soul Level 1 bumped this hatred up several notches. I will never understand the love for this boss. I'll give it a small amount of credit for the exceedingly short run-up, a rarity for Dark Souls 2, but there are so many reasons why this guy sucks. His hitboxes are large and inconsistent, he never sits still and flies around, which constantly drains your stamina. His toxicity can destroy your weapon durability. He has one-shots for days with his breaths and swipes. He can shoot fireballs at you on an annoyingly regular basis. I don't think there's a single moment of pleasure I enjoyed learning this fight at base level. It was a grim case of gritting my teeth and chasing this huge dickhead around until he finally fell. God bless the rapier. This fight really puts you through a gauntlet of different emotions and experiences, and represents the culmination of my journey with gimmick bosses in this run. I struggled with almost every single gimmick boss Miyazaki put in front of me. The Deacons of the Deep, Divine Dragon, even the goddamn Witches of Hemwick, they all made me sweat at base level. But nothing compares to the stress and torture that Radagon's Serpentine's Son put me through. It took me a long time just to get the first phase reliably down, what with the ridiculous Earthquake AoE which required the Raptor of the Mist's Ash of War just to get over. Seriously, I don't think that move is even dodgeable without it. Then once you've put that huge snake down, the fun has only just begun. We enter phase 2. Rykard has these delayed swings and sword drags which constantly trip me up. But of course the number one reason why he's on this list is the Arcane Skulls nonsense. They pursue you like the Terminator for a gambling debt, and it is so easy to get snagged on the stupid bone pile littered around the arena, thereby leading to your inevitable doom. I'm very fond of the fight for the spectacle, the lore, the voice performance, yada yada yada, but holy hell, it is a complete nightmare at rune level 1. After a pretty rough run of unpleasant to fight bosses, I'm pleased to be able to sing some praises right now. I love pretty much everything about this fight, even at base level. The arena provides an epic backdrop, the attacks, even the delayed ones, feel totally fair, and you want to talk stakes? How about taking on a kidnapper in front of their captive? The size of the space you're fighting in means that his blood flame doesn't feel as objectionable as when Gideon pisses it all the way down an alleyway. And Mohg is particularly susceptible to status effects, especially cold, which means that you always feel like you have a window back into the fight. Okay, that's enough of being nice now. I guess I'm still not a huge fan of the Nihil unavoidable attack, conceptually, but the physic easily negates that. Otherwise, great boss, hard as shit to learn properly when the margin of error is tiny, a worthy foe, and one of my highlights of the entire experience. Quite possibly the worst run-up in the entire series, if you count clearing the 3 chasms of old as a run-up, but the boss itself is also no joke. However, it has an over-reliance on its easily dodgeable magic sword move as a major weakness, and by this point in the Dark Souls 2 run I had suffered so much gank that I think I had been steeled sufficiently for the notoriously difficult second phase. It was also another important checkpoint boss that taught me some valuable lessons about playing unlocked when necessary. Eventually a few well-placed fireballs took it down within a single episode, but this creepy caster gave me plenty of trouble before eventually succumbing. One of the most rewarding and totally fair fights at Soul Level 1, but Christ, it wasn't easy. You have to learn all of his tells, which is a regular feature on base level runs of course, but he has so many, and if he hits you when he's buffed, then it's good night Vienna. And in my successful run he buffed like 7 times. The key to victory was to not attack him again if I missed doing so the second he finished his attack animation. You do not get a second successive attack window with Artorias at Soul Level 1, remember that. However, this is an elegant dance, almost like a matador and a bull, and beating him gave me the first indication that I might be able to actually complete this entire challenge. Pyromancy, and especially the Dark Wood Grain Wing, secured me the win here. I have a confession to make. Before beginning this undertaking, I had never even beaten Medea solo before, let alone at Soul Level 1. I had always let 2 human summons fight him properly while I stood in the corner nodding approval, like a cowardly British monarch in an American history film. I think the closest I had ever got was the Pestilent Mist method, which had got me down to maybe half health. Well, that was all about to change over the course of a 4-hour epic Christmas time episode. I knew that this was going to be a total recalibration of mentality going in, You can't cheese Medea. I couldn't summon for Medea. It was time to face the dragon, head on. And what do you know? My eyes have been opened. I see it now. I get the hype. This is the best dragon fight in the series, and for sure the most satisfying and well-earned visceral attack in the whole goddamn game. Firstly, I'd like to recommend Lorina's video, Dark Souls 3, Dark Eater Medea Easy Guide. Easy Guide is in capitals, which does a fantastic job of breaking down the fight and showing you how manageable everything is with correct rolling and spacing and time of attacks. Secondly, don't get this twisted, this guy still took a massive amount of effort, concentration and nerves of steel. I started recording at 2 AM with a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I was going to emerge victorious. At just past 6 AM, I stopped recording, turned off the TV and went straight to bed. It was like the fat, nerdy video gamer version of emerging from a castle, covered in blood, holding the head of a dragon to the skies. Now that's a way to kick off the top half of our list. As John Hammond said once in Jurassic Park, I really hate that man. An absolutely horrible and draining run-up, which I eventually decided to negate through save scumming. He never stops bloody moving, and the sword into the ground attack made me curse the second it arrived. And boy, did it arrive on a regular basis. My favourite bit of that attack is when it sinks into the floor, so you can't shoot it, and instead have to suffer the chaos that ensues. The whole fight is chaotic basically, and I personally find this second phase a lot tougher than the first. I like to think I'm a decent parrier, particularly in Bloodborne, but I could never quite correctly nail the parry timing on his stabs, and overall his high aggression, highly damaging arcane attacks, and tricky to navigate arena earn him a well-earned spot on this list. This absolute unit has by far the most diverse and challenging moveset to learn out of any boss in Dark Souls 3. The arena is pretty similar in look and size to the one where you fight Ishin in Sekiro, but you do not have the lightning speed and unlimited stamina of Wolf in that game, so the challenge of correct distancing is really the key to battle here. Generally, when Soul of Cinder entered their mage or spear phases, I tried to stick as close to it as possible and get plenty of attacks in with my Millwood Battle Axe. Perfect moment to give a shout out to the Millwood Battle Axe. If you're planning a Soul Level 1 run of this game, get into Ariandel and obtain it as soon as possible if you can. It is an awesome weapon and smashed loads of the bosses in this run for me. When the Curved Greatsword or the Lightning came out, I backed the fuck off. The second phase really needs to be played sensitively, even conservatively, in my opinion, but dropping him with a couple of crossbow bolts at the end elicited a sense of relief and accomplishment that sustained me through the Dark Souls 3 end boss gauntlet. All of the hatred that I was expecting to have for the Godskin duo, spoiler, not on this list, has instead been transferred to this abomination of a fight. At no point in the rest of the run was I questioning the sanity of playing Elden Ring in a linear fashion more than this. I started having dreams of heading to crumbling Farum Azula, levelling a weapon to plus 24, then coming back and stomping their heads in. I just wasn't able to do enough damage to the first one before the second one showed up. You know, the second one. The real boss. The twin blade monstrosity. The one that had clearly just been snorting bath salts or PCP before jumping down and slicing your face off. I wept when I found out that they had patched the cheese, where you can make one or even both of them jump off the cliff. The best advice I can give is to run to the corner of the map to the right to fight the first one. This gives you maximum time to finish him off before Skeletor McFuckface turns up. Bloody Slash on my highest powered weapon did the trick. Ignore those who tell you that you to do blunt damage only. They are not your friends. And I can't finish this entry without talking about the Poison Spit. What the absolute fuck were they thinking when they designed this move? They literally perfected it with the Demon Prince's fight. I can't believe how much they dialed up the unfairness here. Anyway, it's a ridiculously tough fight at any level, but at rune level 1 it can consider itself unfortunate not to crack the top 20 most difficult in the entire series. This fight took every ounce of my concentration and patience. I found it nigh on impossible to differentiate between her leaping paw swipe and her leaping bite attack, and that is what contributed to 90% of my deaths on one harrowing 4-hour episode. Seriously, if anyone can explain to me how you are able to spot which of the two is coming, please feel free to do so down in the comments. Luckily, by this point in the game you should have learnt your low adaptability rolls on Soul Level 1 to give you a chance of gambling the correct way. Otherwise, you're cat food. Her challenge on this run is actually very similar to Artorias. It's a matter of patience. You cannot under any circumstances break the designated attack patterns or it will end in death. She does a thing, you do a thing. Rinse and repeat. The arena is definitely a hindrance, not a help too, with a limited visibility making it tough to see some of her AoE attacks. A noble ranking for a noble pet, but not the highest placed feline on this list. Hey kids, guess what? A fight designed to be taken on with a chunkier amount of health and something like 7 summons proves to be extremely hard when you have neither of those things. A quick shout out first of all to the fucking ridiculous difficulty of the first 30 seconds of this fight at level 1 and no summons. Just getting to within range of Radahn can be an accomplishment, what with his arrow rain and GPS tracking gravity arrows. When it comes to the duel proper itself, I don't think I'll ever be able to properly work out this big bastard's close range melee moveset, and all potential cheese strats involving climbing a cliff embarrassingly failed. Definitely due to a patch, not my poor riding skills, I hasten to add. This left me with one option to be able to defeat him at rune level 1 and free the stars. A lore appropriate method involving rotten breath and a hell of a lot of riding around on sand dunes. The fire giant gets the gold medal for the I couldn't do it without you torrent award, but the general is awarded a worthy silver. Even then, it's a strategy that does require some luck, in that his meteors in phase 2 don't decide to come at you while you're in a vulnerable position. I also love the subtle day to night shift as the battle rages on. By the time he finally succumbed to the scarlet rot and dissolved into nothing, the moon was out and I had unlocked my favourite NPC quest in the game by the skin of my teeth. What a gruelling test of endurance this was. I've done such a crazy 180 on this fight due to the process of learning it properly at rune level 1. When playing through the game on a normal save, I used to find phase 1 Gurranq to be an insanely unfun slog to endure and edge past, so we can get to the fireworks factory with phase 2 Maliketh, who I considered to be, for all intents and purposes, the best glass cannon boss that FromSoft had ever done. But hey, now I reckon that once you find the correct distance away from the clergyman's swipes and how to roll through his floor incantations, he's a very tough but fun challenge to jump attack to oblivion. Whereas Maliketh is stupidly overtuned and runs around like the worst combination of an anime character and Sonic the Hedgehog. Once I got the hang of parrying with the Blasphemous Claw, it didn't take too much longer before I had vanquished this gravel-voiced lunatic, but there were quite a few hours of pain and suffering to get to that point. At first the swipes seem to come out faster than your eye can see, and Maliketh is perhaps the worst offender in the game when it comes to delayed attack bullshit. I also really hate that earthquake attack, that can go fuck itself too. And of course, this being Elden Ring endgame, it was one-shot city for almost everything, necessitating a practically hitless approach. A shout out here to my twin great stars. You beautiful bastards. Plus jump attacks equals completion of the game. 4 words for you. Summoning Velstadt meant death. Other than that, I finally found a proper use for alluring skulls in a Dark Souls game after many standard playthroughs, so I'll always remember this complete nightmare for that fact. I swear to God the AI of the skeletons she summons is the most advanced in the entire series. I wouldn't be surprised if they'd warped in from running the Large Hadron Collider. They were infuriating in how they almost always seemed to know the exact moment to protect her. And of course, they would also take off 90% of my health with every successful hit. Leaving the main difficulty mechanic of this boss fight aside and moving on to Elana herself, I forgot just how aggressive she can actually be in melee combat, with her staff possessing a surprising reach which caught me out countless times. Thank God the arena is pretty forgiving, or I might not have made it through this one. A magic buffed rapier and the fact that she has a stationary animation when summoning finally got me over the line, but I know that it would take me another 50 goes at least to beat her if we went again. This was the final boss that Nashandra should have been. This fight elects to screw you in so many different ways that I was quite happy to adopt some of my own sneaky tactics to get through. So here is Sisyphus' patented 3-phase plan that I will share with you now. First phase, invisibility screw you. Throwing knives at your friend. Keep piling a couple into her each cooldown period and you can see where she moves to. Second phase, gank screw you. The storyteller's staff poison works beautifully on big pot boy Robbie Burns, so just keep applying generously and stay on the move. Third phase, Lady Maria on crack screw you. Well, this isn't really a cheese, more just confirmation that backstabbing is your safe punish here. Just keep your distance, keep your cool, and let her jump to you for free damage. If I haven't talked much about the quality of the fight yet, that's because it's Frida. There were no surprises here when it came to difficulty. Everyone knows the challenge that this fight presents. However, learning it was super fun, and never felt oppressive like later Elden Ring bosses, for example. The arena rules, and I love her boss fight trigger line. Fret not, father, we have no need of thy flail. 'Tis only the flame, quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes. I will snuff out these ashes for good. It's a solid number 17 for its innate and inevitable toughness. Personally, I found no frustration here. Look, this is an honest list. A list that accurately captures my experiences fighting all bosses without leveling my character. A list that is a little different to other boss rankings. Do you know how I'm telling the truth here? Because this Betty White-haired knobhead, this innocent looking guardian standing sentinel for an NPC tucked away in the corner of Dragon Barrow, this guy that most people would struggle to remember the name of, is harder than 364 other bosses at base level in the FromSoft universe. Look, we're getting near the end of the list, the pointy end, and it's time for some revelations. Gale's not here. Gehrman's not here. Manus isn't here. Bloody Orphan of Kos isn't even here. But this absolute mad lad is a worthy entrant in the top 20, and I might even be possibly underrating his difficulty here. Let's cover off some of the main points, shall we? Fast flurries of attacks that all one-shot you at base level. A brutal, and I mean brutal, raw attack that can get you from inside the relative safety of the Bestial Sanctum. An aggression level that's off the charts insane, like the Demon of Hatred and Flame Lurker had a baby, and that baby woke up hungover. A bullshit fighting arena on the steps where he can get you whenever he wants, but means most of your attacks will miss him. Look, at least he doesn't have the bullshit poison spit of the Nokron Gargoyles fuckboys, but in every other way, this absolute Giga Chad will wreck your shit, push your front tooth in, and ruin your day. It reduced me to cowering behind a pillar, firing poison arrows at a stray wing like a little bitch. P.S. This is the Bestial Sanctum version only. You can cheese the Grand Lifter rolled one fairly easily. I'm not joking. The successful run on this fight took me 45. That's
45 minutes to complete. If it wasn't for the fact that I already knew the first 2 phases well enough already, this bitch would be even higher. The fact that it can be all over with one jump after a lengthy 15 minutes to get to phase 3 is a headache-inducing experience that I never want to go through again. For the final phase, it took an agonising half an hour of repeating the same move, baiting the jump, then slowly walking towards where the tail was, hitting them, rinse and repeat. I was too afraid to do anything else. Just look at this shit. Those hairy knees added to my stress level considerably. The final seconds of this fight put me into a kind of trance where everything moved in slow motion, like I was being punched in the head while underwater. There were more mechanically difficult fights that I endured and conquered, but for sheer tests of endurance, this was the biggest obstacle and lands it this high on the list. Fuck this boss. I've always enjoyed fighting old Fumi. Well, that came to a shuddering end at Soul Level 1. We all know what he's capable of, so I won't labour the point, but I will mention that his second phase became essentially impossible for me. The hitboxes on those fire-infused attacks became an insurmountable obstacle, and I needed to use the Estus trick to edge past him. Not aware of the Estus trick? Well, you just heal behind him every minute or so, and he will never enter phase 2. The fact that I was required to break the fight's standard mechanics in order to get through tells you everything you need to know about why he's here. And I'll be honest, if it wasn't for such a relatively smooth, easy to deploy winning tactic, he'd easily make the top 10. Fuck, this was bleak. I despawned all the electric reindeer off camera over the course of a rainy Tuesday night and a bottle of single malt. And even then I had to resort to save scumming by the time the second episode of fighting these fuckers rolled around, due to the disheartening trudge back to the fog door every time I misjudged the bite or swipe jump attack, as per my main issue with the aforementioned Arva. The worst area in the series, the worst DLC boss that From have ever made in terms of disrespecting the fanbase. Thank fuck each of these two have less HP than Arva, otherwise it would be A, number 1 on this list, and B, I would still be trapped in an endless blizzard of hell. My rapier and Flynn's ring managed to get me over the line here, and the guttural, joyless scream that passed my lips at the moment of victory will haunt me until my dying day. And dwell on this fight I will. Dwell, bound to my grief and anger, under the fading snowstorm, until all the world has changed and the long years of my life are utterly spent. Pyromancy was my guardian angel for most of my Dark Souls 1 Soul Level 1 run, and never more so than when it came to taking down the Lennon and McCartney of From's gank bosses. A fight that I loved with all of my heart became an abyss of torment, mainly because I hadn't really learned how to fight bosses unlocked at this point in my journey. Looking back at the footage of my early attempts at this boss, I seem a different person, as I cheerfully admonish Ornstein for taking off 95% of my health with his GPS tracking charge attack from the other side of the room. Fiddle-dee-dee, I say. Naughty Ornstein. Oh well, I've just come from happily parrying Silver Knights for hours in Anor Londo. I know this fight better than my own phone number. It'll just be a matter of time, right? Well, after several hours of dispiriting defeats, I eventually struck upon a desperate but effective tactic of fireballing Ornstein to oblivion, and then resorting to getting Super Smo constantly stuck behind pillars and slowly whittling his health down. When put like that, it does sound straightforward, but it was far from that. I reckon if there had been some kind of restriction meaning that I had to fight Super Ornstein, this could have hit top 5 territory, but as it is, it still charts a respectably infuriating 12th. Maybe the biggest base level boss surprise on this list. Who even remembers this guy, tucked away as he is in an optional Chalice dungeon? Well, I'll never forget him. Endless stamina, a vast range of one-shot attacks, a mixture of sword, gun and arcane attacks to constantly keep you guessing. This absolute bastard had it all. And that's even before he gets a buddy halfway through. I eventually won by kiting them both around the pillars, managing to finish off the madman on a rare lapse of concentration on his end, before finally shooting the escort to death. When going back to research for this list, I was shocked to realise that I had done it in around 1 episode. I remembered it as nearer 3, given indication to the trauma that this T-1000-esque motherfucker caused me. At one point I think I had run around the entire arena for nigh on 5 minutes without attacking. All it needed was yakety sax in the background to complete the picture. Never try this fight at blood level 4 unless you're insane, a completionist or a masochist. Or probably a mixture of all 3, like me. I cruised past Story ROM, either first or second try I think, using the huge arena to my advantage without killing a single spider, I think. Chalice ROM offers no such luxuries however, and this fight was the start of my descent into Chalice blood level 4 insanity. The spiders were infuriatingly docile in their second incarnation, meaning a usual tactic of waiting behind a pillar and picking them off just wasn't an option for me. Rom always managed to get 1 arcane attack through, which at blood level 4 is of course game over. As I constantly restarted my recording of the episode outside the fog door, I questioned whether I could continue of course, but also whether I could claim insurance on a smashed PlayStation 5 if I showed the attempts of this fight to my claims handler. Bonus frustration points to jump attacks off screen from spiders that materialised seemingly out of nowhere. Eventually I popped a beast blood pellet, smacked her head with my fists to build the meter, then went to town with bolt paper and prayed for good fortune. After tens of goes I finally managed to get this plan to work, but the hours of misery leading up to that point will never be forgotten. I'd be curious to go back now and try this fight after doing all of the later, faster, more aggressive titles at base level, but at the time it was a huge wall to me in my Dark Souls 2 run. Similar to the Frigid Outskirts, I despawned the unholy Iron Passage run back, off camera and medicated on alcohol, but it didn't help me none when it came to the head scratching and agonising frustration this boss caused me. The diabolically dastardly decision to mix up and delay his timings from his Iron Keep incarnation caused me no end of problems, and I began to have dreams of beating him when sleeping. If the AoE attack when he jams his sword into the ground didn't allow for healing opportunities, he'd be somewhere near the top. You can see on screen right now the sheer relief and valve release of tension when I finally overcame him. I'm fist pumping with a righteous fury I never knew I possessed. Fuck this guy. I cheesed main game Abritus by luring her behind the broken pillar and the altar of despair, but the chalices laugh at such feeble corner cutting. This fight took a week of solid practice before I felt I was able to record, and the successful fight was accomplished with barely a single swing of my trusty saw cleaver. I kept her at mid-distance and threw everything I had at her. That's not a figure of speech. I'm talking 10 Molotovs, 20 knives, 10 bone arrow ash, and another 40 or so bullets, including blood bullets. Add this to 2 viscerals and hell of a lot of a call beyond dodging, and the job was finally done. But I will always hate this fight in particular for representing Bloodborne's counter damage mechanic at its worst. Fuck you for making me face tank one of her charges rather than risk a dodge because of the double damage it will incur. Oh, now we're getting into it. We're really getting into it, and I can feel the repressed memories and the bile beginning to come back. This was probably the most fun boss to master in the top 10, but this says more about the other bosses than this guy, as he is a complete piece of shit. I had to practice with the sound turned off after a while because the endless huh, huh, huh noise that he makes was making me want to punch a cat. I will confess though, the fight did reach a level of satisfaction for me at successful completion, rather than a oh thank the Lord never again. So it's got that going for it. Equip your claw mark runes, dodge and hit first phase, then parry him into oblivion second phase without triggering the Shoals of Doom. If you're noticing a Bloodborne-y theme at the moment, that's because the back half of this game, with the chalices and the DLC content at Blood Level 4, pushed me to the limits more than any other stage of this entire run. It's not the last we'll see of the chalice bosses in this list. Another triggering sound cue, like number 7, that I had to mute, was Ludwig's Phase 1 shrieks, which unsurprisingly I had to hear quite a lot. Just when you think you've climbed the mountain by getting through the insanely difficult Phase 1, Phase 2 enters the fray and claps your cheeks. What really scores this equine prick so high on the list is the structure of the fight. It's such an endurance test to get through the first phase, and a lot of the time you will fail, that it becomes frustratingly rare to get good at that Phase 2 insanity. Eventually I learned when to back off and when to go in hard, and the horse fell. But this kicked off the Bloodborne DLC bosses at a level of difficulty that it never got back to again. Rather surprisingly. Nothing, not even one of the top choices on this list, nothing represents the misery of doing the chalices at Blood Level 4 quite like this boss. A tiny dank combat arena providing very little breathing room, while up against a huge foe possessing bullshit hitboxes, disgusting attacks and an overpowering sense of size discrepancy added up to a horrific time here. I will say that this boss earns its spot on the list for pure diamond cutting hardness though. It isn't the most frustrating boss on this ranking by a long way. At one point, I just laughed at the sheer enormity of the task before me, rolled my sleeves up and got good. Maybe that's why I did this ridiculous challenge in the first place, but this boss meant I never ever want to go near the chalices again at any level, any time, and for any reason whatsoever. What a scumbag. 4 episodes, 1 run-up, 3 dogs, many one-shot kills. Writing down the statistics like that doesn't scratch the surface of the torment this caused me. After realising that I wasn't able to pyro cheese this boss, it slowly dawned on me that the first real wall of my entire experience was here. Ornstein and Smough was very difficult, yes, but it never felt insurmountable. The Black Dragon made me feel like this was it, that I was going to be putting the controller down and never picking it up again before even completing the second game in this entire run. Yet it is always darkest before the dawn, and after my greatest despair came probably my greatest triumph, and certainly my favourite boss victory in the game. A 15-minute epic duel where I dodged nearly every one of his attacks with the help of the Darkwood Grain Ring. That's quite a hard word to say. Let's go for that again. Darkwood Grain Ring. And unloaded nigh on 100 crossbow bolts into his nasty ass. Look, I'll be honest. I'm possibly, nay probably, overrating him on this list compared to some Bloodborne or Elden Ring bosses, if we were to be objective. But this isn't a time for objectivity after what this arsehole did to my mental health. For pure despair, coupled with a just annoying enough run-up, BDK cracks our top 5. This boss may be benefiting from recency bias and end of run fatigue, but the final wall in this entire run sure felt like one of the hardest. The main difficulty that I found in this encounter was coming up with the correct build to script the fight. Radagon in particular will not let you get a moment's peace if you do not take immediate control of the contest from the opening second. I didn't know much about scripting fights in these games before starting this run, but I kinda get it now. What you're seeing in front of you right now isn't the result of true mastery of my opponent, or godlike reflexes really. It's the result of a mixture between endless trial and error, and tweaking my build ever so slightly after the script broke as such. I felt like a claymation director, one little agonising touch after the other. And then when I finally worked that one out, it came to the Elden Beast stage, and it would just stack Elden Stars onto some other bullshit move it was doing, and I was right back at the start. I conquered this boss, this game, this entire run on the one time that the AI forgot to do Elden Stars and I was able to capitalise. That didn't feel good. Well, maybe it did in the moment as I look back on the entirety of my achievement. But this boss, and sorry, it is a single boss, was the equivalent of fighting my way through a castle and then having to play a game of Buckaroo at the end of it. To go from Ishin Swordstain to this monstrosity as a final boss. How far they done fell. Well, it's Malenia. You knew she would be somewhere around here, didn't you? I tried many times to do this fight when allowing her to perform Waterfowl Dance. I promise you. I tried parrying, but 3 successful parries in order to perform a riposte is mental, and I quickly refused to respond to that. Then stagger became my aim while becoming aware of the trigger points for Waterfowl Dance, but I was never able to run away far enough on the second activation point. As unoriginal as the point is, I will add my 2 cents to the common consensus. This fight has so much to recommend it, and succeeds on so many categories, that it is an absolute modern gaming tragedy that Waterfowl Dance takes a massive steaming dump on it. The person responsible for coming up with the idea should be led into a darkened room and made to think about what they've done. I refuse to believe that this is Miyazaki's doing. He must have been in the toilet having a lengthy whiz when they snuck this one past him. I was totally stumped for several days. So yeah, with grim inevitability, I do have to place Malenia this high. At least the strategy I looked up online that finally worked for me. A giant Hunt Ash of War stagger stance break medley. Felt sweet to execute successfully. I cheered inside every time she got knocked up into the air like a Looney Tunes character. Please let there never be a boss fight as busted as this in the upcoming DLC. I'm sure that this entry isn't a surprise for anyone who's actually fought this boss at Blood Level 4, but for the rest of you, you might be slightly surprised. But guess what? One of the worst From bosses that they've ever made by normal standards is still one of the worst, and my pick for number 1 hardest at base level as well. I hate this boss with the burning intensity of 1,000 suns. It didn't have me questioning my sanity like Chalice Rom. It didn't have me questioning my commitment to Sparkle Motion like Black Dragon Calamite. It was exactly what I expected from the first time I entered the fog door to lighting the lamp a week later. Pure, unadulterated misery. Let's run down some of the highlights, shall we? A ridiculous health pool, a horrific camera, vile attacks, an awful moveset, and a truly hateful AoE. This electrified arsehole has the full repertoire. Look, there's no tips, no real tricks, definitely no cheese. Just roll up your sleeves, load up a save scum file, and be prepared to learn every single one of his awful moves to be able to win. This includes, and I'm going to make a real critical point here, you have to learn how to dodge the AoE, because running away from it won't allow you to stagger him successfully. I've loathed this boy ever since our initial meeting when going for the Bloodborne Platinum, and even with From raising their main game boss difficulty instalment by instalment, this little doggo, this fucking doggo, tucked away in a deep, dark, highly optional dungeon, remains their toughest boss opponent at base level. Well, That's my countdown of the top 50 hardest bosses I overcame in my quest to defeat all From bosses at level 1 and no summons. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did writing it. Let me know what you think down in the comments, particularly those of you who have also taken these bosses on with the same restrictions. And I look forward to seeing you to continue this madness once the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC drops. You stay safe out there.
Yes! Yes! Come on! Come on! Come on, that is how it's done. I'm sorry, that boss took me for 4 days, something like that. Unbelievable. So difficult. But he's done. The Chalice dungeons are done. My life can go on as normal. God, that boss is the absolute worst.